The alarm blared through the halls of the White Flight Asterisk, a sleek silver spaceship that carried people between Earth and the outer colonies. Red lights flashed on, and off as crew members ran to their stations. Captain Ta Kim stood on the bridge, his face tight with worry. He was 42 years old, with short black hair going gray at the temples and eyes that had seen too many close calls in space. His white captain's uniform was spotless as always. "How much time do we have?" he asked. Sue, his second-in-command, checked the screens. "The solar storm will hit in 53 minutes. If we don't leave in 30, we won't clear the danger zone." Captain Kim nodded. "Get everyone on board now. No delays." The White Flight Asterisk wasn't supposed to be at Colony 9 today. They had been on a routine trip when they got the emergency call. A massive solar storm was headed straight for the small research colony. Their own ships weren't enough to evacuate everyone. The White Flight Asterisk was the closest vessel that could help. "Captain," Sue called out, "Colony Control says they're sending the last group now. 23 people. Tell them to hurry," Captain Kim said. "We follow the rules. We wait until 30 minutes before storm hit. Not 1 minute more." On the colony below, Ju Kang was working fast. She was 35, with long black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore the plain gray clothes of a scientist, not the fancy things she could afford as the daughter of Han Kang, the owner of Black Interstellar Transport. No one here knew who she really was. To them, she was just Dr. Ju, the quiet scientist who studied tiny life forms from other planets. She liked it that way. "Come on," she said to her assistant too. "Help me pack these containers. We can't leave them." The containers held samples of a new kind of microorganism Ju had discovered on Colony 9. These tiny life forms could repair damaged cells. They might be the key to protecting people from radiation in space. "Dr. Ju, we need to go now," Du said, looking nervously at his watch. "The last shuttle to the rescue ship leaves in 10 minutes. I know, Ju said. "But these samples are too important. 3 years of work. They could save many lives." She carefully placed 6 clear containers into a special cooling case. Each one held what looked like glowing blue gel. "The ship won't let you bring those on board," Du warned. "They're too strict about unknown biological material." Ju smiled. "I have all the right papers. And if that's not enough, I have other ways." She didn't like using her family name to get special treatment. But today, with her life's work at stake, she would if she had to. They rushed to the shuttle port. The small colony was almost empty now. Most of the 500 scientists and workers had already gone up to the waiting ships. The White Flight Asterisk was the largest, hovering above the colony like a shining guardian. Ju and Du made it to the last shuttle just in time. 6 other scientists were already inside, looking scared and clutching small bags of belongings. The shuttle ride took only 5 minutes. Through the window, Ju could see the red edge of the solar storm approaching in the distance. It looked beautiful and deadly. The shuttle docked with the White Flight Asterisk. A crew member in a blue uniform opened the door. "Quickly, please. Direct to the passenger area. 1 bag each only." The scientists hurried off the shuttle. When it was Ju's turn, the crew member stopped her. "I'm sorry, ma'am. What's in that case?" Ju held the cooling case tightly. "Research specimens, properly contained and documented." She handed him her tablet. "Here are the permits." The crew member looked doubtful. "I'll need to get this approved. Please wait here." "We don't have time for that," Ju said firmly. "These specimens are vital." Another crew member joined them. "What's the problem?" "She wants to bring biological samples on board. Against Regulation 15B. Ju felt her patience slipping. "Listen to me. These organisms could save lives. They can repair radiation damage. I have all the proper permits." "I'm sorry, but in emergency evacuations, we have strict rules," the second crew member said. "Captain's orders. No exceptions. Ju took a deep breath. She didn't want to do this. But, do you know who I am? My father is Han Kang. He owns Billionaire Interstellar. The crew members looked at each other, unsure. Please get your captain, Ju said. Inside the ship, Captain Kim was checking the final preparations when his communicator buzzed. Captain, we have a situation at the boarding door. A passenger with unauthorized biological materials refuses to board without them. Captain Kim frowned. He didn't have time for this. I'll handle it. He walked quickly through the ship to the boarding area. 20 minutes left before they had to leave. When he arrived, he saw a woman with a large metal case arguing with his crew. Her face was flushed with anger. What's the problem here? He asked. Ju turned to him. Are you the captain? I'm Dr. Ju Kang. These are sealed research specimens with all the proper documentation. They're completely safe and could be the key to protecting humans from radiation. Captain Kim looked at her sternly. Dr. Kang, I understand your work is important, but we have rules for a reason. In an emergency evacuation, no biological materials without pre-approval. But I have all the permits, Ju insisted, showing him her tablet. Those permits are for normal transport conditions, not emergency evacuation. Captain Kim said, I'm sorry, but you need to leave the case here. I can't do that, Ju said. This is 3 years of research. It's properly contained. There's no risk. The risk is in the unknown, Captain Kim said. My responsibility is to the safety of everyone on this ship. Ju's patience snapped. Do you know who I am? My father can buy it and sell this entire ship. Captain Kim's face hardened. On my ship, it doesn't matter who your father is. The rules apply to everyone. I'm bringing these samples on board, Ju said, trying to push past him. Captain Kim blocked her way. No, you're not. Move aside, Ju demanded, trying again to get past. What happened next took only seconds. Ju pushed forward with her case. Captain Kim, trained in the Terran Defense Force, reacted instinctively. His hand shot out in a sharp movement, striking Ju in the shoulder with enough force to send her stumbling backward. She lost her balance and fell hard on the dock floor. The case clutched to her chest. Everyone froze. Even Captain Kim looked shocked at what he'd done. Before anyone could speak, alarms blared through the ship. Captain. Sue's voice came through the communicator. Storm acceleration detected. We need to leave now. Captain Kim looked down at Ju, still on the floor. For a split second, he hesitated. Get her on board, he started to say. But leave the... A violent tremor shook the dock. Warning lights flashed red. Captain. Docking clamps failing. We need to disengage now. Captain Kim made his decision. Close the doors. Prepare for immediate departure. But sir, one of the crew members gestured to Ju. That's an order, Captain Kim shouted. The boarding doors began to close. The last thing Captain Kim saw was Ju's face, a mixture of shock and fury, as she sat on the dock with her precious case. Get to the emergency shelters. He called to her as the doors sealed shut. The white flight detached from the dock. Captain Kim ran back to the bridge, his heart pounding with the knowledge that he'd just left someone behind. Full power to engines, he ordered as he took his seat. Get us out of the storm path. As the ship accelerated away from Colony 9, Captain Kim told himself he'd made the only choice he could. Rules existed for a reason. The safety of the many outweighed the needs of one stubborn scientist. He had no idea that the woman he'd just punched off his ship was the daughter of the most powerful man in interstellar transport, a man who could end his career with a single call. And he had no idea that he'd just set in motion events that would change everything. Ju Kang sat in the emergency shelter deep beneath Colony 9's main research building. The walls shook as the solar storm raged outside. 20 other people who couldn't get out in time sat with her. Most were maintenance workers and security staff who had stayed to help with the evacuation. Ju held her case of specimens close to her chest. Her shoulder hurt where Captain Kim had struck her, but the pain in her pride hurt much more. "No one has ever treated me like that," she said to herself. Her hand moved to her pocket communicator. One call to her father would be enough. One call, and that captain would never work again. But she didn't make the call. Not yet. First, she needed to make sure her specimens survived. The shelter had basic lab equipment for emergencies. Zhu carefully checked each of the 6 containers. 5 were still intact, the blue organisms inside still glowing. But one container had cracked when she fell. The organisms inside were dying. 3 years of work, she whispered. And now this. Across the room, the colony's security chief walked over. "Dr. Zhu, the storm should pass in about 12 hours. Rescue ships will come after that." "Thank you," Zhu said. Then she asked, "Do you know which company operated that ship? The one that left us?" "The White Flight Asterisk. That's a Terran transport vessel. Captain Ta Kim is in command." Zhu nodded, memorizing the name. Ta Kim, the man who had ruined her research and humiliated her in front of everyone. "I'll remember that," she said quietly. On board the White Flight Asterisk, Captain Kim sat in his office, filing his report about the evacuation. The ship was now safely away from the storm, carrying over 400 colony residents to safety. His second-in-command, Su, entered the room. "Sir, all passengers are settled. We'll reach Earth Station in 3 days." Captain Kim nodded. "And the people we left behind? Any word?" Colony 9 reports all remaining personnel are in the deep shelters. They should be safe until the storm passes. Captain Kim sighed with relief. At least no one would die because of his decision. "That scientist I had to remove. Do we know anything about her?" Su checked her tablet. "Dr. Zhu Kang, xenobiologist. Been working on Colony 9 for 3 years. That's all I could find. She mentioned her father, said he could buy the ship." Su shrugged. "Probably just angry talks." "Sir." "Probably," Captain Kim agreed. But something felt wrong. The way the woman had spoken, with such confidence. Most people didn't talk that way unless they had the power to back it up. "Find out more about her, if you can," he told Su. "And prepare a full report on the incident. Everything by the book." After Su left, Captain Kim replayed the scene in his mind. The woman pushing forward, his hand striking out, her falling to the ground, eyes wide with shock and anger. He hadn't meant to hit her so hard. His training had taken over. In the Terran Defense Force, he'd been taught to react quickly to threats. But she hadn't been a threat, just a stubborn scientist trying to save her work. "I had no choice," he told himself, but he wasn't sure if that was true. Han Kang sat in his office at the top of the Black Tower, the tallest building in New Seoul. Through the wall-sized windows, he could see dozens of ships taking off and landing at the spaceport, many of them bearing his company's logo. At 65, Han was still strong and sharp. His hair was fully white now, but his eyes missed nothing. He had built Black Interstellar from nothing, making it the largest private transport company in the galaxy. His assistant entered the room. "Sir, we've received an urgent message from Colony 9. It's about your daughter." Han felt a cold fear. His only child. "Is she hurt?" The colony was evacuated due to a solar storm, but Dr. Zhu was left behind. "She's safe in a shelter, but what?" Han demanded. The assistant looked uncomfortable. "There was an incident, sir, with the captain of the rescue ship. He refused to let her bring her research samples on board. When she insisted, he physically removed her from the ship." Han's face darkened. "He what?" "According to witnesses, he pushed or struck her, causing her to fall. Then the ship left without her." Han stood up slowly. In 40 years of business, no one had ever seen him lose his temper. He didn't shout or break things. When Han Kang got angry, he got very, very quiet. "The ship's name?" he asked softly. "The White Flight Asterisk." Captain Ta Kim commanding. It's a Terran transport vessel. Han nodded once. Get me everything on Captain Kim, everything on Terran transport. And get my ship ready. I'm going to Colony 9 myself. 2 days later, the news had spread across all the colonies and back to Earth. The story was everywhere, on every screen, in every conversation. Captain ABN Doan's Billionaire's DUGTER in space disaster. At first, many defended Captain Kim. He was following safety protocols. He was protecting his ship and passengers. It was a hard choice, but the right one. But then Han Kang held a press conference from Colony 9. Standing beside his daughter, who had a visible bruise on her shoulder, he spoke to reporters from across the galaxy. This was not about safety, Han said. This was about a captain drunk on his own power. He didn't just leave my daughter behind. He physically assaulted her. Ju stepped forward. She looked tired but determined. I had all the proper permits for my research specimens. They were safely contained. The captain didn't even look at my documentation. When I tried to explain, he struck me and left me to die in the solar storm. A reporter called out, "Is it true your research could help protect people from radiation?" Ju nodded. Yes. The organisms I've been studying can repair cellular damage caused by radiation. They could have saved countless lives of space travelers. But now, because of Captain Kim's actions, years of research have been damaged. Han Kang took over again. I have filed formal charges against Captain Ta Kim for assault and reckless endangerment. I have also called for Terran transport to remove him immediately from command. Across the galaxy, public opinion began to shift. Captain Kim wasn't a hero following protocol. He was a bully who had attacked a brilliant scientist and damaged important research. On the White Flight Asterisk, now docked at Earth Station, Captain Kim watched the news with growing horror. Han Kang, he said in disbelief. Her father is Han Kang. Su nodded grimly. Owner of Black Interstellar, the richest man in the transport business, and our company's biggest competitor. Captain Kim sat down heavily. Why didn't she just say that? I'm Ju Kang, daughter of Han Kang. I would have. He stopped. Would he have done anything differently? Rules were rules. His communicator beeped. It was a message from Terran Transport Headquarters. Captain Kim, upon your arrival, you are to report immediately to the Board of Directors. Your command of the White Flight Asterisk is temporarily suspended pending investigation. Captain Kim closed his eyes. 15 years of perfect service. Never a mistake. Never a complaint. And now this. Sir, Su said quietly, what will you do? What I always do, Captain Kim answered. Follow the rules. Tell the truth. But as they prepared to dock, Captain Kim wondered if the truth would be enough this time. He had made an enemy of the most powerful man in the transport business, a man who could destroy his career with a single word. And somewhere inside, Captain Kim knew he had been wrong. Not about the rules. The rules were clear, but about how he had handled it. He should have found another way. As he left the ship, a crowd of reporters waited. Camera drones buzzed in the air. Everyone wanted to hear from the captain who had punched a billionaire's daughter off his ship. Captain Kim straightened his uniform and stepped forward to face the storm he had created. The hearing room was large and cold. 5 members of the Interplanetary Transport Authority sat at a high table at the front. They would decide Captain Kim's fate. Captain Kim sat alone at a small table on the right side of the room. His lawyer, provided by Terran Transport, sat beside him. The company had not fired him yet, but they had made it clear they were not happy. On the left side of the room sat Ju Kang and her father, Han Kang. They had 3 lawyers with them. Han Kang had not spoken a word since entering the room, but his eyes never left Captain Kim. The head of the authority, an older woman named Director Park, called the hearing to order. We are here to investigate the events that took place during the evacuation of Colony 9, she said. Captain Ta Kim, you are accused of using excessive force against Dr. Ju Kang and endangering her life by leaving her on the colony during a solar storm. How do you respond? Captain Kim stood up straight. I followed emergency protocols, Director. The safety of my ship and the 412 passengers on board was my primary concern. Director Park nodded. We will hear all the evidence before making our decision. First, let us review the ship's logs from that day. A large screen on the wall showed a timeline of events. The warning about the solar storm. The white flight arriving to help with evacuation. The final countdown to departure. According to these records, Director Park said, the storm accelerated unexpectedly, giving you less time than planned. Is that correct, Captain Kim? Yes, Director. We had to leave immediately or risk losing the ship and everyone on board. Next, they showed security footage from the boarding area. The images were clear. Ju arguing with the crew. Captain Kim arriving. The argument getting more heated. Then the moment when Captain Kim's hand struck out, sending Ju to the floor. Many people in the room gasped. Seeing it again, Captain Kim felt sick. It looked worse than he remembered. Captain Kim, Director Park said, would you explain your actions at this point? Captain Kim took a deep breath. Dr. Kang was attempting to bring unauthorized biological materials on board during an emergency evacuation. This is strictly against Protocol 15B. When she refused to comply and tried to force her way past me, I reacted to stop her. I did not intend to use such force. My training in the Terran Defense Force took over. Did you check her documentation? One of the other directors asked. There wasn't time, Captain Kim said. In an emergency evacuation, the rules are clear. No exceptions for uncleared biological materials. Director Park turned to Ju. Dr. Kang, please tell us your side of this incident. Ju stood up. The bruise on her shoulder was fading, but still visible. I had all the proper permits for my specimens, she said. They were contained in regulation safety units. I tried to show Captain Kim my documentation, but he refused to even look at it. When I insisted, he struck me without warning and left me behind as the ship departed. And what exactly were these specimens? Director Park asked. Ju's face lit up. This was her chance to talk about her work. They are microorganisms I discovered on Colony 9. They have the unique ability to repair cells damaged by radiation. My research shows they could be used to protect space travelers from the harmful effects of solar radiation, exactly the kind of danger we faced that day. A murmur went through the room. Several directors leaned forward with interest. So, your research could potentially save lives? Director Park asked. Yes, Ju said. But because of Captain Kim's actions, one of my primary specimens was damaged. Years of work was set back. Han Kang spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet but firm. My daughter has dedicated her life to this research. She doesn't use my name or my money. She works hard and follows the rules. And this is how she was treated. He pointed at Captain Kim. This man should never command a ship again. The room fell silent. Director Park turned back to Captain Kim. Captain, did you know who Dr. Kang was when this incident occurred? No, Captain Kim said honestly. She mentioned her father could buy the ship, but I didn't know who she meant. It wouldn't have mattered. The rules apply to everyone equally, even when the rules might be wrong. Han Kang challenged. The rules exist to protect lives. Captain Kim replied, looking directly at Han Kang for the first time. I've seen what happens when they're ignored. People die. Director Park nodded. Let's hear from some witnesses. Several crew members from the white flight testified. They all said Captain Kim was strict but fair. He always followed the rules. He had never used force against anyone before. Then Ju's assistant from the colony, spoke. Dr. Ju is brilliant. Her work is important. But that day, she was determined. She said she would use her family connections if needed. I think she believed the rules shouldn't apply to her research. Ju looked shocked at Du's words. She hadn't expected him to say that. The hearing continued for hours. More evidence. More witnesses. Both sides made their final arguments. As the day ended, Director Park announced, "We will consider all the evidence and announce our decision tomorrow." That night, Captain Kim sat alone in his small apartment. His career was probably over. Even if the authority didn't punish him severely, Terran Transport would likely fire him to maintain good relations with Han Kang. His doorbell rang. When he opened the door, he was surprised to see Sue, his second-in-command from the White Flight *. "Sir," she said, "I found something important." She showed him her tablet. "I've been reviewing Dr. Kang's permits. They were properly filed, but there's something strange. Her research was approved for normal transport. But there's a note here from Colony Safety Office." Captain Kim read the note. *Warning. Specimens show unusual growth patterns when exposed to solar radiation. Recommend not transporting during solar events. This wasn't in her documentation. She tried to show me, Captain Kim said. Sue nodded. "And there's more. I found the colony's original evacuation plan. Dr. Kang's lab had a special radiation shelter specifically for her research. It was safer for the specimens to stay there during the storm than to be on a ship." Captain Kim frowned. So she knew this. She knew her specimens should have stayed in the shelter. "It appears so," Sue said. She might have been more concerned about getting them to better equipment on Earth than about following the safety recommendations. Captain Kim sat down heavily. "This changes things. Will you use this at the hearing tomorrow?" Sue asked. Captain Kim thought for a long moment. "No," he finally said. "I still used excessive force. I still left her behind. Those were my mistakes. But thank you, Sue. This helps me understand what really happened that day." The next morning, everyone returned to the hearing room. The mood was tense as Director Park prepared to announce the decision. After reviewing all evidence, the Interplanetary Transport Authority has reached the following conclusion, she said. Captain Ta Kim acted within emergency protocols regarding the refusal of unauthorized biological materials on board. However, the use of physical force was excessive and unnecessary. She looked at Captain Kim. "You will be suspended from command for 3 months and required to complete additional training in conflict resolution." There were murmurs of surprise. Most people had expected a harsher punishment. Furthermore, Director Park continued, "We are recommending a review of emergency evacuation protocols. There should be clearer guidelines for handling scientific materials with potential benefit to humanity." Han Kang stood up angry. "This is unacceptable. He assaulted my daughter." Director Park looked at him calmly. "Mr. Kang, our job is to be fair, not to satisfy your desire for punishment. There were mistakes on both sides that day." As the hearing ended, Captain Kim walked toward the exit. He passed by Ju and paused. "Dr. Kang, I am truly sorry for what happened. I hope your research can continue." Ju looked at him for a long moment. "It will continue, but not thanks to you." As Captain Kim left the room, he knew this wasn't over. He had survived the hearing, but Han Kang was not a man who accepted defeat easily. The real battle was just beginning. 1 month into his suspension, Captain Kim felt lost. For 15 years, his life had been his ship. Now he spent his days in his small apartment, watching the news and waiting. Terran Transport hadn't fired him yet. The company was waiting to see what happened next, but they had made it clear that his future was uncertain. Every day, the news showed Han Kang. The powerful businessman was using the incident to attack Terran Transport. Black Interstellar's stock was rising. Terran Transport's was falling. "I should have just looked at her permits," Captain Kim said to himself for the 100th time. "I should have found another way." His doorbell rang. When he opened the door, he was surprised to see Sue. "Sir," she said, "I think you should see this." She showed him her tablet. It was a news report about Ju Kang. She was back at Colony 9, continuing her research. The colony had been repaired after the solar storm, and Ju had a new, better lab. Her research survived. Captain Kim asked. Sue nodded. Some of it. And there's more. She's made a breakthrough. Her radiation-healing organisms work even better than expected. They're calling it the Kang Protocol. It could change space travel forever. Captain Kim felt a mix of emotions. He was glad her work had survived. But it also reminded him of his mistake. Why are you showing me this? He asked. Sue looked at him seriously. Because I think you should go there. To Colony 9. Talk to her face to face. Apologize properly. Captain Kim shook his head. She wouldn't want to see me. And her father would never allow it. Maybe, Sue said. But if you don't try, you'll always wonder what might have happened. After Sue left, Captain Kim thought about it all night. In the morning, he made his decision. He booked passage on the next ship to Colony 9. Ju Kang looked through her microscope at the glowing blue organisms. They were growing well in the new lab. Better than before. The solar storm had actually helped her research. When her damaged container was exposed to a small amount of radiation during the storm, the organisms had changed. They became stronger, better at repairing damaged cells. Sometimes bad things lead to good results, she said to herself. Du, her assistant, entered the lab. Dr. Ju, there's someone here to see you. Ju looked up. Who is it? Captain Ta Kim. Ju froze. Captain Kim. Here. Why? He says he wants to talk to you. Apologize properly. Ju's first reaction was anger. The memory of being struck, of falling to the floor, was still fresh. But then she thought about her research, about how the damaged container had led to her breakthrough. Send him in, she said. A few minutes later, Captain Kim entered the lab. He looked different in civilian clothes, smaller somehow, less confident. Dr. Kang, he said with a small bow. Thank you for seeing me. Ju didn't smile. Why are you here, Captain? To apologize. What I did was wrong. I followed the rules. But I should have found a better way. I should have looked at your permits. I should never have used force against you. His words sounded sincere. Ju studied his face. You traveled all this way just to say sorry. Yes, Captain Kim said. And to see your work. Sue told me about your breakthrough. I wanted to understand what was so important that day. This surprised Ju. She hadn't expected him to care about her research. Very well, she said. I'll show you. For the next hour, Ju explained her work. The microorganisms that could repair radiation damage. The breakthrough that happened because of the storm. How they could protect future space travelers. Captain Kim listened carefully. He asked good questions. He seemed to truly understand the importance of what she was doing. Your work could save many lives, he said when she finished, including the lives of pilots like me. I understand now why you were so determined that day. Ju nodded. And I understand better why you were so strict about the rules. Safety matters too. There was an awkward silence. Then Captain Kim asked, what will happen to your research now? I need a proper testing environment, Ju said. A ship that can travel through different radiation levels. But safe testing is difficult to arrange. Captain Kim thought for a moment. If you had the right ship, with the right safety protocols, you could advance your research much faster. Yes, Ju agreed. But such a ship would be very expensive. Even my father hesitates to commit so much money to one research project. Before Captain Kim could respond, the lab door opened. Han Kang walked in. Father, Ju said in surprise. I didn't know you were coming today. Han Kang looked at Captain Kim with cold eyes. When security told me Captain Kim was here, I came immediately. Why is this man in your lab? Captain Kim stood up straight. Mr. Kang, I came to apologize to your daughter and to learn about her important work. Han Kang's face showed no emotion. You have done enough damage, Captain. I suggest you leave before I call security. Captain Kim nodded. I understand. Thank you for your time, Dr. Kang. As he walked toward the door, Ju suddenly spoke up. Wait, Father, Captain Kim and I were having a productive conversation about my research, about how it could advance with the right testing environment. Han Kang looked at his daughter with surprise. You're defending this man, after what he did. I'm not defending what he did, Ju said. But I've learned something important in my research. Sometimes, when things break, they can grow back stronger. She pointed to her microscope. The organisms that were damaged in the incident, they're now the strongest ones, the ones that work best. Han Kang frowned. What are you saying, Ju? I'm saying that mistakes can lead to progress, if we learn from them. She turned to Captain Kim. You know ships, you know safety protocols. You understand why my research matters. What would be the ideal ship for testing the Kang protocol safely? Captain Kim thought for a moment. A mid-sized vessel, small enough to be maneuverable, large enough for proper labs, triple-layered radiation shielding, compartmentalized sections so experiments can be isolated if needed, and a crew trained in both scientific protocols and emergency procedures. Han Kang listened with growing interest. Such a ship would be very specialized. Yes, Captain Kim agreed, but it could advance Dr. Kang's research by years. The benefits would far outweigh the costs. Han Kang looked between his daughter and Captain Kim. Something had changed in his expression. Captain Kim, he said slowly. You are currently without a ship, I believe. Yes, sir. My suspension ends in 2 months. Han Kang nodded. Black Interstellar is building a new research vessel. It will be completed in 3 months. It needs a captain who understands both safety protocols and the importance of scientific research. Captain Kim's eyes widened. Mr. Kang, are you offering me a position? Not yet, Han Kang said, but I am considering it. My daughter's judgment in scientific matters has always been excellent. If she believes you could be valuable to her research, I am willing to listen. Ju looked as surprised as Captain Kim. Father, are you serious? Black Interstellar became successful because I know when to turn enemies into allies, Han Kang said. Captain Kim made a mistake, a serious one, but his record before that was perfect. And if he truly understands the importance of your work now, he turned to Captain Kim. Would you be interested in such a position, Captain? Working for the man whose daughter you punched off a ship? Captain Kim took a deep breath. If it means I can help Dr. Kang's research succeed, research that could protect countless lives, then yes, I would be honored. Han Kang nodded once. We will discuss details later. For now, I suggest you both continue your conversation about this research vessel. I want to hear more about these safety protocols. 3 months later, a new ship prepared for its first voyage from New Seoul Spaceport. It was called the Harmony *, and its mission was to test the Kang protocol in real space conditions. On the bridge, Captain Ta Kim stood in his new uniform, black with silver trim, the colors of Black Interstellar. Beside him stood Dr. Ju Kang, now the ship's lead scientist. Ready for departure, Dr. Kang? Captain Kim asked formally. Ready, Captain, Ju replied with a small smile. As the Harmony * lifted off, Han Kang watched from the control tower. The ship represented a new direction for his company, a partnership between safety and science, between strict rules and bold discovery, all because a captain had punched his daughter off a ship, not knowing who she was or how important her work would become. Sometimes, Han thought, mistakes lead to the greatest progress of all.